Yeah, go ahead. A sound of a bell with a gavel at the same time could mean only one thing.
Power.
And that, no, and that is it's time for the May meeting of the Franklin Grand Isle Community Partnership. I want to thank everyone who is
recording in progress.
Everyone who is either here in person or via Zoom. We also discovered one thing this morning, which is that the clock in the room was 2 minutes slow. That's why we're starting a bit late. And I went over, and now we should be good in the future. So anyway, once again, I want to thank everybody for being here this morning and taking time out of your busy schedules. We will start, as we typically do, with introductions and something that you're grateful for, as well as, of course, your name, title, organization. And if you go over the 40-second allotment, you get the bell. And if you're a first-time attendee, we will also ring the bell. So with that, we'll start with those who are via Zoom. Melinda.
All right. Good morning, everyone. So I'm going to start with the order I had people on my screen. I'm going to start with Jessica Moore.
Hi, good morning. I'm Jessica Moore. I'm the pastor at First Congregational Church of St. Albans. And today I am especially grateful for my yoga practice. It's been a really stressful month and I've really needed it. So that's me. Thank you.
Thank you. Matthew.
Yes, my name is Matthew LaFleur. I use he and pronouns. I am now a new member part of the state of Vermont Truth and Realization Commission member. Basically, to make it short, make sure policies and politics revolve around everyone, not just the ones that can empower. But I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Amanda.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda. I work for the St. Albans Notch, and I am thankful for this past week. I went away to Florida on my daughter's April school break, and it was great. It was nice and relaxing and some great family time.
Awesome. Thank you, Amanda. Randy.
Good morning. My name is Randy Allen. I'm a recovery coach at Turning Point of Franklin County, and I am so grateful that I have a fantastic family in recovery that is so willing to help. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Michelle.
Morning, Michelle Trea from NCSS Parent Child Center, and I'm grateful to have been able to spend some time with some family members that I haven't been able to see for a while. One of them I hadn't seen for 20 years, and so we made a pact to get back together in 20 years again.
Thank you. Kylie.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Kylie. I am an RN care coordinator for Notch, and I am grateful for warmer weather ahead.
Awesome. Thank you. Janine.
Hi, I'm Janine Fleury. I'm the Development and Communications Director for Vermont Adult Learning, and I'm grateful that it's May, which suggests that it should be getting more spring-like every day. So let's hope that happens.
Thank you. Jess.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jess Graff from Franklin Grand Isle Community Action, and today I'm grateful for volunteers. We had a crew of volunteers here on Monday morning, and among other things, they were able to clean our vans that we use for food shelf food pickup. And I'm very thankful to have bright, shiny, clean vans inside and out to start off the spring season for the food shelf staff.
Awesome. Thank you, Jess. Katie.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Katie Doyle. I am a peer support specialist, loss recovery coach at Turning Point of Franklin County. I am grateful for the ability to see things for as they are, not as I would want them to be.
Love it. Thank you, Katie. And I know I saw
Megan, but I know she had audio and it looks like she popped off, so if I see her jump back in, I'll reach out to her, but otherwise, I think we're ready to hop in the room. So I will start with you.
Good morning. I'm Karen Heinlein Grenier. I'm the director of the Turning Point of Franklin County. And I am grateful for our community members, especially I'm thinking about our school board directors. Georgia has their vote tomorrow. And I know it's been pretty difficult, and I'm thinking that the community pulls through.
I'm Katie DeFord. I'm the Assistant Director at the Turning Point of Franklin County, and I too am grateful for my family. My kids got to meet some new family members that I haven't seen in years, so it was really nice.
My name is Stephanie. I am a peer community advocate for the northern region of Vermont, for Vermont psychiatric survivors. I am grateful for two things. One is being able to take part in services for my children that is well needed. Super duper grateful for that. And two, to be able to work on projects with individuals that I am supremely passionate about and am hopeful that it will change some lives, because if it does, then everything that we have all been through will be totally worth it.
My name is Courtney. I work at Franklin Grand Isle Restorative Justice Center as the Tamarack Pretrial Service Coordinator. And I am grateful that on Friday we have a half day for Green Up Day, and I'm really grateful that it's not going to rain.
Good morning, everybody. Chad Fallon, Vermont Department of Health. I'm grateful it's getting nicer. I pulled my golf clubs out and I'm ready to start golfing, which could be good for my well-being and extremely detrimental for my well-being.
All at the same time.
I'm not very good, but I like it a lot.
Hi, Erin Creeley, District Director, St. Albans Office of Local Health, VDH, Vermont Department of Health. I am grateful for two things. I'm grateful for my nephew, who is going to be 4 months old this month, which is crazy to me. And I'm still really grateful that the eclipse went right over our community and that we got to see it.
My name is Mary Peckner, and I am the Substance Use Prevention Consultant for Division of Substance Use Program at Vermont Department of Health. Amy's not here, so I think I have the longest title today. I am grateful for, last week, both, two of my kids are traveling, and I was chatting with them, and as I was chatting with them, I realized that my daughter was standing in Hilton Head, South Carolina on the beach while we were chatting with my son, who was at Cannon Beach in Oregon, and I was like, what a gift that was to be able to have them have that kind of excitement and want to share it with me, but just having that moment that I realized I had children on either side of a continent, really, at the same time, at the very edge, so it was amazing and wonderful. And just one little thing, the dog has grown up enough to be off the leash and on the electric collar. So far, so good. At 80 pounds, we're doing good.
Hi, John Gordon, Sheldon Food Shelf. First off, there is a problem with May in that my beef cows all look at that beautiful green grass. Well, I can't turn them out until I get them all vaccinated, and vaccinating beef cows is not much fun. But on the positive side, just a couple things. First off, while we continue to see tremendous need, I really, even during the height of the pandemic, I don't think I had as much food in my food shelf building as I have right now. I have literally pallets and pallets and pallets of food, but we're moving food at just a huge rate. And also, for those of you that remember Larry Chris' presentation several months ago, Bill H661, which was reforms for the Child Protection Registry and the process of substantiation. That bill passed the House. It came out of Senate Senate Welfare on a 5-0 vote, and I think today it's having its third reading and will hopefully be passed by the Senate so it can be signed by Governor Scott. So the first in a 12-year effort to attempt to get some reform in the child protection system. There's more to do.
Yes.
But we've got DCF on board with saying they can actually make some changes.
Thank you.
Maybe it'll work.
Many things take time, yep. Mary, I'm sorry to inform you, you no longer have the longest title in the room.
I know.
That's right. That's right.
I had it for a moment.
I'm here.
Joined by
30 seconds.
Amy. Amy, you're on.
I'm sorry I'm late, everybody. Good morning. I'm Amy Brewer. I'm the health educator with Northwestern Medical Center, coordinator of the Franklin Grand Isle Tobacco Prevention Coalition, and the regional coordinator for Safe Routes to School for Local Motion. It would help if I only had one job, but I have one. I am grateful. I had just a lovely ride in this morning. I saw a belated woodpecker. I got to rock out some Michael Jackson from the 70s. It was just a fabulous little ride in my own little head.
In your own little head, listen to you. Well,
I think I'm gonna switch back over to the Zoom because we had a couple people hop on. Hi Megan, I see you made it back. Would you like to go next? So doing an introduction, who you are, where you work, what you do, and something you're grateful for.
Good morning, everybody. Megan Bridges. I work for United Way of Northwest Vermont. I'm the Director of Partner and Volunteer Engagement. And this morning, I'm grateful to remember the tech tip. Would you try turning your computer on and off? I did that and it worked.
tech tip of the day.
Thank you. Nicole?
Hi everyone, Nicole Cunningham. I work at Northwestern Medical Center as the Regional Self-Management Program Coordinator. And this morning I am thankful for coffee. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole. Ali?
Yes, Ali Jain, BVF Regional Manager. I cover Chittenden and Franklin Grand Isle, and I'm thankful to be here with you all.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go back to the room. Dr. Dandurand, if you'd like to introduce yourself and something you're grateful for.
Hi, Louis Dandurand. I'm the medical director in the ER across the way there. And I'm grateful for my ER teams that show up 24/7, take care of people in the community.
Excellent. Thank you. Joe, I think you're up.
Back to here now. Okay, I'm Joe Helko, Director of Community Relations here at Northwestern Counseling and Support Services. And I am grateful for those that we're going to spend some time with a month from now, which is our legislators. They have a very difficult job. Many of you who have had bills and other scenarios throughout this session and past sessions know that, our legislators who are they're not just full-time legislators like in many states. I always try to point that out because we're all at them trying to get this bill passed or that initiative moving or whatever the case may be. And that's coming from all types of directions in the time that they have available to have all of this landslide of information tossed at them. So I just want to take a moment to say I'm very grateful for the fact that they serve and they try to do the best for Vermonters as much as they can.
My name is Melinda White, Recovery Coach Supervisor for the Emergency Department, with Turning Point, and also Blueprint Map Lead. I'm going to mention VTAR board member because one of my gratitudes today is the work that Jeff Moreau has continued to do as the Vermont Alliance for Recovery Residences Executive Director. To piggyback off what Joe has said too, there's been a number of bills that have been worked on for years and we're seeing some forward movement, so that's exciting. And then also being a Summit co-founder, I'm really grateful for the community partners that we've connected with already that have signed up for booths, that are going to be sponsors, Summit presenters. Just super grateful for the collaborative people and organizations we have in our state. I've done more and more partnering with different organizations in New England and in other states, and while all states have, their strengths and weaknesses. One huge strength we have in Vermont is that we work so well together, and I am so grateful for that, because that is not always the case. And I look at the volume of work and salaries that are spent just on trying to communicate together in some other, and for us, it's like that's already happening, so we can really get to the meat and potatoes of helping people, which is the common goal. So, yeah, grateful for community partnership. And I think that's it. I am peeking one more time. If there's anybody I missed, let me know, but I think we've got, oh, wait a minute, and Hunter, I'm sorry to call you out, but if you'd like to tell us something you're grateful for.
Sure, I'm Hunter. I work at Northwest Access TV, doing videography and some editing. I'm grateful for the weather this morning. I like the misty, foggy mornings. I don't often have to get up super early for this work or any of my other work, but when I do, and it's kind of got that like morning dew on the street and everything, it's nice. So that's what I'm grateful for.
Thank you for bringing a silver lining, because that wasn't my perspective, so I'm very grateful for you.
So Hunter, what you're saying is, with what you've just expressed, people don't have to spend the money to go to London to experience the same.
Exactly. We have that here. It rains all the time.
You get, right.
That's what I heard
You like
too.
that, huh? Yeah, really. Okay. So let's move on to the approval of the April minutes, which I know I had sent with your packets, and they're also on the table here. So do I have a motion to approve the April minutes?
So moved. John?
John, okay, second. Mary, any discussion? Okay, with that, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. So now I'm going to turn the meeting over. We've been waiting for this presentation. I know it's kind of moved over time when it's going to happen, so we've been very anxiously awaiting the Turning Point of Franklin County presentation. And for that this morning, we're blessed to have 4 individuals here. Of course, Melinda, Karen, Katie, and Dr. Danduran, who will speak about the Franklin County Turning Point.
Awesome. Thank you, Joe. And I hope you guys are okay with us. We're going to kind of stay here versus going up in the front so I can still manage some of the back end stuff. So the first thing I'm going to do is share the PowerPoint, and I will ask anybody on Zoom to unmute yourself and just tell me yes or no. Can you see this?
We can see it.
Beautiful, thank you. I'm not going to put it in present mode because for some reason that seems to get wonky. So I think to start us off, I'm going to turn the floor over to our Executive Director, Karen, and then we'll just start going through some overviews of the center and what the center does.
Well, thanks for having us. I know it's been a while trying to get here. So one of the things that I just noticed on our screen is the Turning Point is a place where individuals in or seeking recovery can come for support services. So we work with individuals seeking recovery, but we also work with family members. So I think that's kind of important to really let people know. It's sometimes we see the family member before we see the family before the member. So we've got our St. Albans office, which is open Monday through Friday. We're open on the weekends for meetings, and that's by volunteer basis on the weekends. We're staffed Monday through Friday in St. Albans. We now have a Ridgeford office at 53 Main Street, and that is open on Wednesdays, and it is staffed by Tim Gilman, Misty Leach, and we also have a volunteer, Jared Bryce, who's there with us now. We're in Enosburg on Thursdays at 331 Main Street, and staffed by the same individuals, Misty and Tim. All of our Albert and Islands outreach is all remote. We tried to open an office there, and there really just wasn't anyone who was interested in coming to the office. They were more interested in making that phone call, which works for us, so we can offer support for anyone Monday through Friday. And all of our services are free, which is very helpful. So if people don't really know what the Turning Point is, we are a community recovery center. So we work to support individuals and their families. We opened our doors in St. Albans, Vermont in 2011. in our outreach offices in 2019 and 22. Then we brought on our wonderful programs for our RCED and our parents group. And I think one of our big things is that we want everyone to know that we're not just a 12-step. We don't just carry 12-step programs. We're open for all paths of recovery. And we really want people to know that if there are any good groups in the community, that we're available and we're interested in to hear what they might like to see in our centers. What is RCED? RCED is the recovery coaches in the emergency department. I think I jumped ahead a screen or two. And Parents in Recovery is our mom's program and our men's program. So at this time, I looked at our average for the last 3 months, and 1,285 visits per month has been pretty much our average. And we see 100 support meetings a month in our centers. And that includes the St. Albans, Richford, and the Enosburg location.
So as Karen said, we average about 100 meetings per month. This is a full list of all the meetings that we have over our 3 locations. Everyone's pretty familiar with NA and IA, but I picked out a couple just to kind of go over like what they were. So we have like a faith-based group that's on Fridays at 7:30, and that is a support group for people who have been affected by incarceration, and that also includes family and friends can go to that. We do Smart Recovery on Tuesdays at noontime, and Smart Recovery is more of a science-based program instead of a 12-step program. And it helps people to build and maintain motivation, coping with urges, and managing thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, and living a balanced life. And we also do a potluck every month, and we average about 30 people at those, roughly. Changes every month.
Do you have a potluck at all 3 locations? or
No, just the St. Albans
Just the
one.
St. Albans one?
Yeah. So I'm going to talk about our Parents in Recovery. It used to be Moms in Recovery, but now it has changed to Parents in Recovery, so it offers services for both moms and dads. It is a support group of parents that are looking for recovery or seeking recovery or have been in long-term recovery at any stage. The fear and shame that comes with using often prevents parents from seeking help. So because of that, we strive to have a safe, confidential, fun space for moms or dads to come and get support and meet other parents. We offer a wide array of activities that include support groups, individual recovery coaching, resources, and activities. And with the fear and shame, you know, it's sometimes scary to walk into our doors, so we also offer off-site activities. So we'll go to the playground in the summertime, we'll go to like hard X sledding in the winter. We're going to start doing some recovery walks around the town and up in Richford as well. We offer support groups on Wednesday. Those ones are in person and online, and that is also at our Richford office at 10:30. And we also, on the same day, on Wednesdays at 10:30, there is a men's group, but they're both in person. So there's one in St. Albans and one in Richford as well. We have a Facebook, a Moms in Recovery Facebook that you can check out. We list all of our activities on there. Yeah.
So, what is a recovery coach? Recovery coaching is a form of strength-based support for people with addiction or in recovery from alcohol, drugs, codependency, or other addictive behaviors. So the Turning Point does support people with more than just alcohol and drugs. It can be, there's a Codependence Anonymous group, family member groups. And recovery coaches generally focus more on the present. Oftentimes people will ask me, what's the difference between a recovery coach versus a therapist or a counselor? And therapists and counselors usually focus more on helping people cope with their past, versus recovery coaches are often present and future focused with the people that we support. The key pieces of recovery coaching is motivational interviewing, and resource referral. So we use strength-based approach with motivational interviewing to help tease out what it is a person might be motivated to work on first. It's easy, and I'll say this for myself sometimes, to be talking to somebody that might have multiple issues they're struggling with, including homelessness, and in my brain the first thing is let's get you housed and then look at everything else. But that's not always their perspective. They might feel, you know what, I just want a job, I can make it to work each day. So our job is not to direct, instruct, it's to ask questions so the expert, which is the person we're helping, can pull those answers out, because the reality is the answers are usually inside the person, not with us. What we can do once we identify those needs with the person and some barriers is help them with reducing those barriers. So once we recognize what a person is motivated to do and what their needs are, we connect them with the appropriate resource. So in our community, if it's struggling with housing insecurity, then we'll connect them with Community Action, with Samaritan House / Tim's House, with Economic Services Division. If there's food insecurity, we'll connect them with Community Action, with Martha's Kitchen, so the food shelf at Community Action. So our goal is really to just provide resources to people and then to help them figure out what they're motivated to do, what's most important for them to do, prioritize and make small achievable goals versus looking at, oh, we have all this stuff to do, because that can be, that's overwhelming for anyone. And when somebody is struggling with multiple barriers, we really want to help them see very small things like showing up. Thank you for showing up. Making that call. Thank you for making that call. So really celebrate the wins, however small they may seem or large they may seem, so somebody can feel, cheerleaded, encouraged, supported, and then have the energy to do the next step. So that's what the recovery coaches are. I am going to stop sharing the PowerPoint for a moment, and I'm going to share a video. We did do a test this morning, so I'm hoping that everything will still work well. This video is part one of a 3-part series, WCAX Investigates. The reporter Laura Allman met us at the Substance Use Summit last year and was really interested in learning more about addiction in Vermont. She did a 3-part series, and the reason I'm going to share this first part is because the individual that she interviewed had presented at the emergency department, been supported by a recovery coach, both this person and their mom, supported by a recovery coach, and got support to get through the process of treatment recovery. And oftentimes when, and I'll talk more about the RCED, which is Recovery Coach in the Emergency Department. We'll dig into that deeper, but I wanted to show this first because oftentimes the team in the emergency department, just like law enforcement, get to see people at their worst. They don't get to see the what happens next piece. And it's not that every story has a shiny outline and ending, but when there is one, I'm really motivated to celebrate that. So I'm going to hit play. And I'll ask anybody on Zoom as soon as I hit play just to yell out yes or no if you can hear the sound.
We report often on Vermont's opioid crisis and its impact on Vermont communities. It's measured in numbers like overdoses and deaths, but it's not easily measured in terms of treatment and recovery.
Tonight, we begin a 3-part investigation into what drug treatment looks like in Vermont and how well it's working. In part 1, Laura Ullman explores what is often the first step to recovery, a stay in rehab.
I'm from St. Albans, Vermont, and I grew up in a pretty healthy home.
Josh was a beautiful little boy, very high-spirited, a lot of fun. He was very popular in school.
Josh Lash's vision of his life changed in an instant when he started using drugs at 18. His mom, Celinda Santor, found out years later. The night her sister died, Josh showed up suffering from withdrawal.
I turned and looked at him, and I made him stay at my sister's house with me for 2 weeks to try to detox him on my own, and very unsuccessful.
Moving into recovery for me at first was people kind of pushing me to do it, and that kind of caused me to not really be ready to go in yet.
Self-admission is what experts agree is the best way to enter recovery.
So the process of getting in here would require the individual in need to give us a call.
Chad Vijay heads a nonprofit that runs 2 residential treatment programs. These programs are often the first steps toward recovery.
That call can be supplemented with a referral from a hospital, a recovery center, a loved one, but really we want to hear from the individual.
Josh Lash relapsed 3 times after attending a separate residential treatment program in the State Valley Vista in Bradford. In October, xylazine sent Lash to a breaking point.
He almost lost his foot, and I think that scared him.
When he got discharged, his mother drove him that night to Valley Vista.
We just talked the whole time, and I'm like, I just want my boy back, Josh. I want you back. And he promised me he would, and he's coming through with it. So I'm very thankful for that.
The first few days at a residential treatment center are detox. After that, meetings all day.
It's really what people in early recovery need, is to keep their mind focused on, recovery.
Most people who go to Valley Vista or other residential treatment programs use a state insurance plan, which covers a base rate per patient. They can stay as long as they want, but state insurance barely covers a 2-week stay, and the provider picks up the rest of the tab.
Cost of treatment has more than doubled.
Valley Vista's Rick Stefano says that's due to the high cost of nurses who are contracted through an agency due to the lack of medical professionals in state.
I think we've done a poor job as a system to incentivize working in this field. It's very difficult when school is expensive and the pay in this field isn't competitive with other healthcare fields.
Waves of retirement and burnout during COVID and the closure of a sober home in 2021 have also hit the industry hard.
I believe we were somewhere in the realm of 500 to 600 licensed alcohol and drug counselors pre-COVID, if I'm not mistaken. I believe we're down to about 263.
The staffing problems have decreased bed availability in recovery homes across Vermont. And with the rising cost of care, providers can't foot the bill for people starting their recovery journey to stay longer.
I wanted him to stay for 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, anything but 2 weeks. 2 weeks is not enough time for someone to get the proper help. It's not.
Santor is grateful her son was able to move into a recovery residence in Maine because of the lack of openings in Vermont. Despite the distance, his mom is just happy he's alive.
I just don't want people to give up on him. You can't give up on him. People will tell you to, but don't listen to them. Don't give up on them. I'm so glad I didn't give up on mine. I'm so glad, because it was worth the wait.
Josh Lash still lives at that recovery residence today. He was able to move in after stopping his medication-assisted treatment, which is what doctors say is the best option to abstain from opiate use. In part 2 of my special report, we'll break down what that treatment looks like and why it may not be the silver bullet to the opioid epidemic. In the studio, Laura Ullman, Channel 3.
Okay. Josh's story gets me every time because he changed so much from somebody who was broken, struggling with lots of medical issues, xylazine lesions everywhere, to a person who had the willingness to follow the recommendations, to go to treatment. I will say that the residential treatment programs do prioritize patients that are going from the emergency department to residential treatment. So being able to get them in with a turnaround time of essentially less than 24 hours from the emergency department visit was huge. And seeing pictures of him, seeing the video of him, getting pictures from his mom, CJ was texting pictures, he was taking pictures in front of lighthouses and by the ocean, like seeing a person who, again, some of the medical team at the emergency department only saw that person that was at their worst. So it's easy to lose heart and lose hope that what we do matters. And that's why I'm really passionate about sharing this story, because this is just one of many scenarios of a person presenting, not for the first time, with xylazine and opioid use and overdoses and all these challenges, and yet having that spark of willingness and getting the help very quickly is still thriving in Maine as of now. And the same with CJ, his mom, Celinda, but CJ, she was so hopeful and prayerful that her son would get the help that's needed. And I remember the message coming through of, after all the years and attempts to help him, one visit from you did it. And it's not the one visit from the recovery coach, but it is the ability to have that missing bridge for so many years of a recovery coach to continue the care to the next step, all the way through the continuum of care. And that's the nice thing with recovery coaches, is that it's not just a matter of, well, let's get you to the next step and then good luck, we're hoping, we're rooting for you, but it's the, 2-3 months later, how are you doing? So that's the beauty of the recovery movement, the recovery world. And I'm going to pull back up the slideshow so we can talk a little bit more in depth now about the RCED, which is Recovery Coach in the Emergency Department. Okay, and I did put, there is a slide, we're going to be sharing this as we do with all PowerPoint, with all the presentations each month. This will be included, and it has the links to the 1, 2, and 3 part. The second part talks about a little bit more about MAT, how it is obviously life-saving for many, and it may not be the best route for all. Talks about some of the data supported, and then the third part is focused on the recovery residences. So they're really good, informative stories on the strengths and some of the gaps that we're still looking at. So the recovery coaching in the emergency department. The recovery coach in the ED is part of the team of the recovery coaches at Turning Point in Franklin County, providing direct peer recovery support services to the patients at NMC who have experienced adverse substance use related events. Currently, we have myself and 2 other part-time coaches that are responding to the emergency department. Our coverage is 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Our goal, of course, is to eventually have 24/7 coverage as some other areas of the state. We were the last area to adopt it, so we might, in some degree, like we haven't expanded to the level as others, and yet to another degree, and I know I'm biased because I'm with that team, we have destroyed barriers that some of the areas of the state have as far as the relationship with Turning Point staff and medical staff, and we're so blessed for that. We have very strong relationships with our leadership, with the nurses, the docs, the MAs, the registration staff. We're very fortunate for the partnership that we already have in such a short time of this program being implemented in this hospital and community. And the recovery coaches will essentially provide education on harm reduction. So if somebody is presenting for an overdose, the first go-to is often, let's make sure they have harm reduction packs, let's do some education on reducing harm when using. Also providing support and resource information to family members. So I'm going to just use the case that we saw publicly, that's been publicly aired and shared, as a good example of there's a mom and a son that presented. So just as much as the son was needing help, mom needed help too, because she was emotionally probably even more unhealthy than her son at that point. And also willing to do what it takes to get strong and healthy so she can be a good support to him. So we provide those resources. Assisting individuals to identify and develop natural community supports to foster independence and community integration. And one thing I'll say is, we don't necessarily achieve all this at the bedside of that visit. Sometimes it takes time. People might be a little bit sedated, they might be a little bit hypervigilant, they might have some anxiety, whatever it might be. So the goal is with the RCED program, one of the first things that we do as coaches when we enter the room with a patient is introduce ourselves, who we are, what the Turning Point is, and our program is 10 days of follow-up following your emergency department visit. Most cases last much longer than 10 days, but the goal is just, can we follow up with you in the next 10 days? And it's not only to provide support around substance use, right? It's also to provide, I had one person that their biggest motivation, and I don't want to skip too far because I do mention employment, but their biggest focus was they wanted to be employed. So that's what we did. We called Working Fields and set up an appointment from the emergency department bed. So our goal is to support people with what they're looking for as a need to, because we look at the social matrix, right? A person might be using a lot, but it's not because of the drugs and the substances or the alcohol as much as it's the social matrix. What is missing within their life? Are they missing healthy connections with safe, supportive, substance-free people and places and things? How can we incorporate that, help them incorporate it in their lives? Are they struggling with poverty and finances? How can we make sure that they are connected with Economic Services Division or connected with employment partners and services? And with the working fields, they come with a recovery coach. So there you go, the person already has 2 recovery coaches checking in on them just from that one connection. So our goal is to make sure that people are supported with what it is that they identify that they need, and provide direct services to individuals receiving treatment at NMC following an adverse substance use related event. Overdoses are kind of the most obvious, right? If somebody goes to the ED and the chief complaint is an overdose, we know like that's going to be a good candidate for a recovery coach. Some of the ones that are not so obvious and yet are just as important are people who may go in with a sprained wrist because they fell. But then it's determined that the primary reason they had fallen was because they were under the influence and they've been struggling with substance use. So there's a lot of different chief complaints that we may see, and yet one of the root causes is a person's substance use. So we try to see anyone that could be identified. In my opinion, it's better to see too many people and learn that they're not really in need or not really interested than to not give everybody an opportunity. I remember the pager going off not too super long ago. It was like 10 minutes before 8 p.m. and so I went and responded, and the patient was wonderful, just completely uninterested, period. Like, thank you so much, it's very nice you came here, you did a great job trying to convince me, but I'm just not interested. And that's okay. And I remember the nurse saying, I'm really sorry for calling you up here. I'm like, no, don't be sorry. We would rather go and let the person make the decision versus us not giving them a chance. One more thing I'll mention before, because I do want to turn it over to Dr. Dandrian in a minute. One story is an individual that I had gone to the emergency department. I was just doing a check-in because we go if the pager goes off, and then I like to pop in and just see how are things going. Is there anybody who could benefit from a coach? And this specific day, there was somebody I saw, and then after that, I said, is there anybody else? And the charge nurse said, well, we do have somebody that most definitely needs a coach. However, we're not going to ask you to see that person. I was like, okay. I said, why is that? So that morning there was a physical altercation in the triage room by the person, and they had to leave. But then they presented hours later, still needing help. So the nurse had suggested contacting a recovery coach, and then the person started screaming and swearing and throwing things. So obviously the nurse thought, well, I don't want you to get abused today, so I'm not going to ask you to go see that person. What I did feel was important was obviously not to go to the person against their will, but just to kind of walk by and check it out. So I happened to be meeting with Dr. Dandrian for some paperwork stuff anyway, and I said, I just want to walk by this room. I just want to walk by this room, see if it's somebody I recognize. It was somebody that was struggling with homelessness, no phone, tons of barriers. So I walked by and the person didn't look super familiar to me, maybe a tiny bit, but not really. But then when I walked by again, the person called out, hey, you. And I was like, me? And he said, yes. Aren't you the piano player at Church of the Rock? I said, well, yes, in fact I am. I said, do you want to chat? And he said, yes. So it's like I was invited in. Sat on a stool with that individual for probably about 40 minutes at least. And the person asked me to even pray with them before I left. So again, turn it over to Dr. Dandrian just to get your feel and perspective on what you see at NMC with this program, maybe with the culture there in the emergency department, and what your feelings are from the partnership.
I think
We're just bringing a mic over to him, anybody on Zoom. Stop sharing.
what you can gather from the conversation so far, that really it's a life and death situation for a lot of these folks, So what Turning Point brings to our ED for folks, and it's not every day, but it's quite frequent that we're able to make an intervention and turn somebody in one direction versus the other direction. And the other direction really is dire. It's very dire for these folks. Addiction, especially addiction in this day and age with the synthetics. It's a killer. It's an absolute killer. I mean, it's evolved into this just, addiction that people just, lose complete control, much worse than it was, say, 10 years ago. And making that connection at it's the right time, the right place, and you can somehow, you get a giant ship moving down, and somehow you're able to tweak it so that it moves in this direction versus continuing on that course. It is a collision course, really. And to integrate Turning Point into our operations, it's not a simple, straightforward. Now we have Turning Point. Let's just use Turning Point. It's not that simple. We have a staff of 100 people or thereabouts, trying to, again, from our perspective, integrating a service of that nature to make it effective takes a lot of effort. It takes reminders, integrating Turning Point into our monthly meetings, so that there's a presentation every month from Turning Point, so there's familiarity, repetition, and then presence. It takes a presence in our department, which is a key component of this program.
Thank you.
Yep.
So are there Turning Point people there, or is it a case of when someone comes in, you need to call?
So both. As Melinda says, they'll do rounds. We've also given Turning Point, Melinda specifically, access to our systems so that she can actually view our department and just remotely take a look and see who's in the department. But then it's a call. And then when they're not available on the weekends and after hours, we have a logbook. So there's an avenue to communicate that there's a person that might need a call during business hours.
Yeah, we're keeping track of all of those. Our goal, of course, is to expand our hours. So we're keeping track of all the, I hate saying the word data when we're talking about human lives, but keeping track of the missed opportunities due to the lack of coverage. And again, our goal is to expand to 24/7. And again, we're the newest area in the state to have adopted this, so it's not unusual that we're not like at max capacity in comparison to the centers that have been doing it for quite a few years. But we're definitely moving in that direction. I'm going to share a couple more quick stories, but want to offer, I see Randy, I see that you are on screen. Are you comfortable sharing a 2 to 3 minute overview of your, let's say, your perspective, your opinion on the RCED program? Awesome.
Hi, I'm Randy Allen from Turning Point in Franklin County, and before I came to St. Albans, I ended up in the ER, and I was broken, lost. I was broke. I had pretty much given up, and I was moved to a bed, not directly in the ER, but this was in Burlington, to a back room until they could try to get me into Valley Vista. Well, at the worst point, I remember waking up, and I think it was early evening. The lights were off in the room, but there was a hall light on. So all I saw was this female leaning over my bed, talking to me, saying, "It's going to be okay, you're going to be fine." And when she said that, it was like, wow. And she said, "I was in that very bed 2 years ago. You're going to be just fine." And I finally got to meet her. Her name is Mishka from Turning Point of Chittenden County. And, that really just stuck with me. I mean, I don't know why. At first I thought it was a dream because all I saw was a silhouette, this lady. The next day I realized it really happened. And that's something you don't forget, because it was a calming voice. And to have somebody say that you're going to be just fine. And and now I'm a recovery coach. So it can happen. It can happen just like that, just little things that can be said to you while you're in the ER that will just keep you from jumping off that edge, you know, and keeping faith and knowing that maybe it's going to be okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Randy. I appreciate you. Super blessed to work with Randy. So recovery coaches often, I've always liked the term that a recovery coach is like a cerebral prefrontal cortex, because when people are struggling with addiction, we know it damages the brain, right? And the brain needs to create new neural pathways in order to access the frontal lobe. And what often happens is, I know in my case too, and many people I've helped, we kind of need somebody to help us tap into that prefrontal cortex. And that is essentially what the recovery coach's function is. And again, it's by that motivational interviewing and helping a person process. And there's something, one of the first things I like to share with people that are new in recovery is PAWS, P-A-W-S, which is the post-acute withdrawal symptoms. Because I remember experiencing that myself, and until I learned what it was, I thought that I was completely losing it and destined to fail and going to keep on chronically relapsing. But when I learned that post-acute withdrawal symptoms surface often in the first, third, 6, 9, 12-month point, and what to expect, then it helped me not freak out when all of a sudden I'm feeling like I'm withdrawing again, or I'm drunk. Like, why is it that I haven't touched anything or changed anything and now I'm feeling off? So just understanding the science of the brain and how the brain and body heal was critical for me. Also learning different ways to heal faster, right? I don't know too many people in recovery that came into recovery with a lot of patience. So it's like, we want to be good, we want to have our 1 year, we want to feel great yesterday, and yet that's not how it works. But there are some of those things that can help speed up the process and or reduce some of the symptoms of the healing. So looking at things like exercise, like food and diet intake, music therapy, nature, those are all, having the recovery community, like those are all things that once a person gets connected with recovery community, they're able to have pro-social, access to pro-social events and to connection and to these little groups, because oftentimes, you know, we encourage people that they're going to need to change people, places, and things in order to be successful, and yet that's not always easy in a small state like Vermont. So whether it's supporting a person who's going through residential treatment and then going to a certified recovery residence after that, sometimes the person may be returning right home and it's a good, safe atmosphere. Sometimes they return to an atmosphere that is not healthy. And because of whether it's being parents or their employment, they just feel they can't, you know, continue on to the long-term path of residential recovery residences. Our goal is to at least give them as much support as possible so they can change within themselves what needs to be changed to stay successful, because that's one of the first things that we learn is we can't change the world around us. I think Katie Doyle had said it so beautifully about accepting things in the world as they are, not as she would like them to be. So we learn a lot about acceptance and what do we have control over, and most of the time it's just our thoughts and our actions. So how can we learn to have healthy thinking, to have, you know, not naive outlook, but positive outlook, to know that, yep, bad things happen and also good things happen. So where are we choosing to spend our time? And oftentimes we, you know, the right action will follow up with the right feeling. It's pretty rare that we feel like doing the right thing. That doesn't come naturally I don't think it comes naturally for anyone a lot of times, but we do it because it's the right thing to do and then we feel better after. I'm going to pull the PowerPoint up, but I do want to share, well, actually I'll share a couple of stories before I pull it back up and wrap it up. So another example of, we're seed planting at the emergency department. And sometimes you see the miracles start happening right there at the bedside. Most times you don't see that. So another example that comes to mind is a person who was struggling in a huge way at the emergency department, tends to present to the ED quite often, struggling, wanting help, and also the follow-through can be a challenge. And in this specific day, it was leaving against medical advice. So we had started the process of doing a screening with a residential treatment program, and the person just started becoming very anxious and hypervigilant, and quite frankly got a call from their drug dealer and wanted to leave. So blew past the nurse, took off. And the goal was to have done the call at 1 o'clock that afternoon, but since the person was already in the ED, I had them on the phone, but the person failed. Well, interestingly enough, even for me, who gets to see a lot of miracles happen after, I felt like, okay, well, we're probably not going to see this person again unless they present to the emergency department down the road. But sure enough, Karen sent me a text and said, so-and-so is here ready to complete their screening. So it's just to say that even though there's these moments where you feel like, okay, well, this is not going to happen, the person still surfaced. They presented to the turning point. And that's what I love about physically meeting people where they're at. Anybody who knows me knows that I have vented a lot from hearing that phrase overused too much by people who don't leave their office. That's what I love about this program, because the coaches go to the person in the emergency department, which forms a relationship, which in turn makes, like this patient, comfortable enough to go to the recovery center after. And that's really what it's about. Even if it's just a 2-minute face-to-face, like Randy just said, that was one of the most powerful moments that he experienced with it being at the hospital, and now it's in recovery. And that's it wasn't an hour coming to Jesus conversation. It was a few minutes of somebody saying, I've been there, I get it, you're gonna be okay. Which is why it's always worth going, even if somebody says, well, I'm not interested, don't want your help, because oftentimes they might call 2 months later and say, I need help, and I still had your card. Another person was a very high utilizer of the emergency department, very high. Probably, I would assume the highest, although I haven't compared notes with Dr. Dan Duran yet, but plan on researching this more. My belief would be it's the highest utilizer. And after so many visits and so many attempts, the person is now finally in treatment for the first time in their adult life. They never had I shouldn't say they didn't have the opportunity, but because of homelessness, no phone communication, transportation, regardless of how much help community partners have tried to give this person, those barriers made it so difficult. And yet this last time, the person finally made it and called me last week. And I was sitting at my desk at tears because I had only heard this person talk clearly enough to understand a few months prior when the police department called me and said there's somebody here who needs help, and they're actually coherent enough that you might be able to get them help. And we had done a screening, but we weren't able to locate the person after. But this last time the person called, and it is just amazing and beautiful and miraculous to hear this person talk. And I just can't wait to hopefully have that person's short story shared down the road like Josh's was. And then the last one I'll just mention is an individual who had presented to the emergency department, and again, just needing help, not having a medical emergency that necessitated him staying, but needing help. And in approximate week and a half, there were over a dozen interactions with law enforcement with this person. And again, root cause was needed help. And we are very blessed to know that the person is still, so that we got the person to the Adult Teen Challenge program, which is, well, used to be 12 to 15 months, now they say 8 to 12 months, and the reality is they'll let people stay as long as they need to be in a safe setting. So that person has been there for a couple weeks now, and has been to many other places that didn't seem to work and didn't complete stays, and is still there. So it's just to say that this program is not the end-all be-all, but it's another complement to the work that the community is doing to reduce visits to the emergency department, to reduce, I think for me it's the most, reduce the burden on the person that needs help. So those are just a few stories, and I'm going to close it out with our last slide, just to give a little bit, which I probably should have started with this, but anybody who knows me knows that I'm not the most orderly. So the RCED program was established in 2018 with the goal of serving individuals presenting with substance use disorders to the emergency department. And it was establishing partnerships between the Department of Health, Recovery Coach Center, the Vermont Recovery Center. So there's 12 recovery centers in the state of Vermont, and their local hospitals. And then as of 2021, recovery coaches are now in all hospitals throughout the state. We in Franklin County, the Turning Point and Northwestern Medical Center, partnered in 2021, and then our RCED program went live in January of 2022. So still fairly new. And then we've supported 309 individuals in the emergency department so far. So I think in the interest of time, I'm going to move forward with our last slide, and this is very off topic from emergency department, but anybody who knows me knows that we don't like to be boring. So oftentimes people will say that they're motivated to help with recovery and the Turning Point, and they want to volunteer, what can we do? And this felt like a great way to let people know if you have any kind of a skill set of a group you'd like to do or an activity that you'd like to do with people seeking recovery that you'd like to, you know, donate your time for once a week, once a month. You can get pretty creative, whether it's arts and crafts, crocheting, the bobble beard pattern.
Maybe that's for you.
I was hoping Amy would be here for that part. And yeah, exercise. So just wanted to, again, people sometimes feel really passionate about this topic and they want to know how they can help. And they may not have any experience working in the field, and you totally don't need to. So anybody who's interested in volunteering some kind of a good or service, you're welcome to cook for us too. We all, sorry. People in recovery like to eat. But yeah, so all joking aside, I am super grateful for the RCED program that we have. I feel like it's only the beginning because of course it takes a good year just to kind of establish and figure out processes and whatnot. And in this last year we have seen a larger volume of people, continues to grow. And again, it's just a complement. We need all of the different services. The recovery coach complements the therapist, the doctor, the clinicians. It isn't in place of the sponsors, right? So it's a complement to all those positions. Any questions?
I would just like to throw in that I think one of the nice pieces, compliments for the RCED is removing the stigma with medical professionals. So not only do we support the visitors to the hospital, we've also been able to support the staff. And I think that's such an important piece.
That is huge, huge, yeah. I gotta say, like, some of the partnerships with, I mean, I know I tend to like kind of love all people and whatnot. I don't love all people, but most people. And that being said, the emergency department staff are just amazing because I see what they do and often say, you know, the way that they're supporting people, it's brilliant and beautiful. And they say the same thing. I don't know how you do what you do. Well, I don't know how you do what you do, but that's why we all need to be part of this. Matthew, I see your hand up.
Yes, my question is, moving forward, as we may know, what I see in my work across the state, many individuals across the state are not being compensated very, very fairly for these type of, important jobs, even, just doing, municipal jobs. To me, it's like, moving forward, how can we compensate these individuals that's doing the hardest work? So I mean, yeah, they're volunteer, but we know that being a volunteer and taking advantage of someone is two different things, And in my work, it's a very concern that yes, we want people freely to volunteer if they can do that, but we don't want to take advantage of them in many ways, that I see across my work, which is a lot of people across the state are being taken advantage of and not being fairly compensated for the hard work they do. So where do you see this going in the future for Franklin and Grand Isle County? Like I said, Albert and the rest of the Grand Isle County are remote, which I like, Is there a way to entice or to get, more volunteers and make it more meaningful to them to participate? Because everything revolves around equity. And if we don't have equity, we're not moving forward. Because it feels like, there's a big disconnect, about who are we really supporting at this point, and who is really being supported by those individuals, and how can we make sure they can still be participating, but make sure that this is making a difference in their lives and their communities' lives too as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. That's beautiful. Do you want me to answer? Or do you want
Well,
to
I was going to. So one of the things. So we, opened our doors in 2011, and when we opened our doors, we had a budget of $50,000 a year. And in the last 2 years, we've been able to increase the funds. So we pay a very good wage to our staff. We have actually very few volunteers now. That's why the volunteer slide was, these are just like off things. But the staff at the recovery centers and our outreach offices, make a pretty good wage nowadays. We've been able to add dental, vision, medical coverage. We work really hard to increase the funding, and we've done that. So we really rely less on volunteers. That's why we just ask for these little separate, little side things. Like I think of Mary. I think we would do like dog training. We could bring a dog training because we have a few dogs. I can see that in the backyard. But for the most part, our staff is compensated. You know, we're always looking to increase their wages, but we've done, I think, a phenomenal job across the state to bring that up to par.
Yeah, Matthew, I love that and appreciate it. I was smiling when you were saying that because I was thinking of exactly what Karen said. You know, when the Turning Point first started, it relied heavily on volunteers. And now there's that combination of, because sometimes people want to volunteer, right? Not for a specific employment position that's full-time maybe, but to do these little like arts and crafts and that kind of, you know, fun to share their skills. And also the recovery centers, the peer recovery movement has gone forward in such a huge way over the last 10 years, even 5 years, where the peer profession is being professionalized more and more. And I know you're probably, you know, in tune with that too. So the beauty is we're all going the right direction with peer, the efficacy of peer services. Again, not as fast as probably we want, because I tend to be impatient, but at least it's been going that direction. And there is fair compensation for these positions because they have been proven to be evidence-based and effective and necessary for people struggling with substance use and mental health. So I love what you said, and I think you're totally right, and excited that we have gone in that direction. And there's always more room for improvement, that's for sure. So we don't want to give up with continuing to advocate and see more fair compensation happen. And the rest of the story is at least we've seen a big shift already. So definitely exciting. Anybody else have questions? I see a hand, Michelle.
Hi, thank you. Well, first of all, I'd like to just thank you all for what you do. Such important work. I guess my question is this. I saw an article in the Vermont Digger this morning, actually, on that UVM is seeing an increase. I think it's because of the xylazine or whatever, that big word, from blood infections that folks are getting. Are we seeing that up here in Franklin County also? Because that seems like it's another compounding factor when folks are already trying to work themselves through recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. The complication rate from substance use is definitely increased. I think that the total number of folks that are suffering from substance use may be decreasing, but what I've seen nationally in the statistics is that the fatality rate, the morbidity is up, and we're seeing that here, absolutely. Again, these substances out there are so addictive that and they cause a lot of damage, and blood infection is only one of the many complications that people get from these addictions.
And I think just to add on that, Michelle, you mentioned the xylazine, and that absolutely is happening as a result of xylazine use. And unlike sometimes other substances, people may develop issues with location of injection and those kind of things. With xylazine, the challenge is that people don't even have to inject it to end up breaking out in these lesions. It constricts the blood flow. So, some of the common misconceptions is like, well, only if I'm injecting. I remember one person saying, well, I don't even inject in that location. Why is this happening here, here, and here? That's why, because it is a flesh-eating disease to some degree. And that's like Dr. Dandrian said, the potency of what we're seeing people use.
The other thing I want to mention is that, xylazine, sure, I mean, we can name it ourselves, but when you get a white powder on the streets or whatever you're using, you don't know xylazine's in there. you don't know it's xylazine until you're broken out and all these, I mean, and you're at your wit's end, and these drugs are super powerful, they're mixed. You don't know what you're getting really. I mean, the person on the street can tell you, you know, whatever, but in the end, most of these folks don't know they're injecting xylazine. So it's a wild west out there on the streets.
Yeah, and I think on that note too, so the Turning Point Recovery Center, we do have harm reduction packs, and in those and at the hospital too, at NMC, at the emergency department. Sometimes the medical staff will give somebody a harm reduction pack, and in those there are xylazine test strips, and fentanyl test strips, Narcan, so there's great resources in there. One of the challenges with the xylazine test strips is that it's not effective with cocaine use because of lidocaine, so they're still working to tweak the way those are manufactured, but it's still a tool to give people. And also, if people do overdose on the combination, xylazine is usually used in combination with fentanyl, with opioids, not just on its own. So Narcan does not, it doesn't remove the xylazine, what am I trying to say? So if somebody is given Narcan, it'll reverse, that's what I was looking for, not remove, reverse. So it'll reverse an opioid overdose, so opioid only, not xylazine. However, it's still important to give the Narcan because it takes the opioids out of the equation. So even though it doesn't reverse xylazine use, it still will support with getting the opioids out of the equation because oftentimes they're used hand in hand. So we encourage people to go to the Turning Point, to the Howard Center, to the BART Clinic, anywhere they can for these harm reduction supplies, because those can be, as we know, life-saving. We go through a lot of them, and thank God for that, because many of the people that use them we see again, and they're still alive because of those resources. Any other questions?
Would you say, so backstory, prior to this role, I was a social worker with DCF in Burlington, and let's say today's May 1st, if somebody's experiencing substance use and would like to seek treatment, we call Valley Vista, call Serenity, we can get you in bed in 6 weeks. Who would you say, hypothetically, who would you say is the person, would that be recovery coaches, Turning Point, who can try to support an individual in that interim when they're just white knuckling trying to get to that bed? Is that a good resource to point people towards?
Absolutely. That's the other piece that a recovery coach plays. The critical piece is that if the bed is going to be, 7 days away, and the person is like, okay, well, what do I do in the interim? Because we lose a lot of people in that time frame. So connecting them with a recovery coach, having them do whether it's 12-step meetings, all recovery, peer-to-peer support, having somebody to talk to. I know a lot of us, we love to see people get right in the center of the recovery community because immediately they get phone numbers of different individuals, and you see people jumping in and saying, well, oh, you don't have transportation, I'll pick you up for this meeting. Or why don't you go with me for a cup of coffee? So absolutely, the recovery coach can be one of those, especially the recovery community, because the Turning Point is staffed at specific hours throughout the week, but there's still, like Karen said, it's still open on weekends for certain meetings. So it's like if somebody can just get in the center of the recovery community, they're gonna have a buffet of what to choose. Whether it's that person who likes to take a newcomer out for coffee and a bite to eat, whether it's a person that wants to give you a ride to a meeting so you can have the meeting before and after the meeting. So that by far is one of the best suggestions that anybody can be given is connect with the recovery center, get the list of the schedule, get connected with a coach, and then they can possibly get a warm handoff to a sponsor, because a sponsor is able to provide even more than a recovery coach in a sense of frequency of contact. Most times a sponsor wants to hear from you every single day. They want to see you, hear from you every day, whereas a recovery coach, it's not that high of a frequency. So that's kind of one of the goals, is to connect to the recovery community so a person can have full wraparound support.
Yeah, I think it's really important to really stress that. It's building that recovery community, because we really saw it during the pandemic where all of a sudden people had no ability to make a meeting at the Howard Center. And when you've built that recovery community, you've got people 24/7. It opens the door, and it's the key. I think it's really the key to recovery. It's not recovery. It's not an island. If you can't build that community, it's pretty devastating. But it just makes all the difference in the world, and there's always somebody there for you, 24/7. if you build that community. So we really push that. It's not about the turning point of Franklin County. It's about all these services and all of these folks, and it's your community. So.
I think it's an important concept. You know, when you know, in the emergency department, we see things that are crisis. We need to do something about immediately, or not, depending on the situation. But and our psyche really is to, again, do something on the spot. But really, and it is a crisis. When somebody comes in with substance use disorder, it is a crisis. That person is in crisis. They're in crisis, and every minute of the day they're in crisis. But the solution is long-term. It's not intervening there at that point in time. You got to intervene and keep them alive. But on the other hand, if you try to get somebody to flip and say, well, you know, you got to change your way, it's not. You've got to give them the opportunity then to come back a week later, days later, however it works. And that's what Turning Point provides. It provides that longer term care, longer term contact point that we just can't provide in emergency department. So, yeah, it's definitely a symbiotic relationship.
I want to jump on my particular soapbox for a second, and number one, say thank you to all that you all do, because it is professional, it is successful, it is integrated, it is all those amazing things that really does get success. I was in a classroom with middle schoolers the other day, and I wanted to bring this up because I think one of the things that we can continue to do is protect those growing brains of our young people. And one of the things that I heard multiple times in multiple middle school classes is questions about caffeine pouches, energy pouches, right? So it's kind of like smokeless tobacco or chew or dip or whatever, but it contains caffeine. And my point is that I think we can continue to help young people understand the role of caffeine into that, alcohol, tobacco, you know, cannabis, and now caffeine, and how those things affect their developing brains. And one of the things, you know, the messages they're getting is that I need to sleep less, do more, right? And they're foregoing sleep. So I'm just, as we're thinking about preventing the complementary piece to all that you're doing, that we can continue to reinforce. Kids are really looking for stimulation or excitement, and now caffeine pouches are another way that they're doing that. So
that's good to know. I haven't heard about caffeine pouches.
Well, Zyn is another one with a synthetic nicotine
that I know
people
about.
feel like it is not nicotine because it's synthetic and legally it is different, but the effect on a teenager's brain is going to be the same, we're saying. Yep.
Yeah.
I have a question. So I have a lot of clients who I try to refer out for lots of different services, but mostly I work with people struggling with substance use or mental health, and a common thing I get is like, I don't want to go to a group. I don't want to tell my story. Wondering how you, because I'm sure you guys get that a lot too, like do you just use motivational interview techniques, or what's something that like you find helpful to kind of get them thinking more about the benefits that you guys speak of having that community?
There's a few strategies that I've used, which is meeting with the person one-on-one first. Like, let's connect you with a recovery coach one-on-one. You don't have to go to like a huge group, because a lot of people have that social anxiety, and you know, I'm very familiar with that. So let's just start small with the recovery coaching one-on-one. Another thing is the online meetings can sometimes be helpful. There's been people that really enjoy like 12-step, but they're uncomfortable around too many people. So it's like, well, let's start small and get you on a Zoom meeting. You don't have to put your camera. You don't have to put your real name. And you don't have to share. If they're just wanting to kind of get comfortable, familiar with what to expect in the atmosphere, I've had people that have started by Zoom. There's also, some of the groups are very small. And I think sometimes there's a misconception that there's a room of 80 people and it's huge, and that's not, especially now that there are so many different groups and meetings across the state. They're not, there are some that are still pretty highly attended, but for the most part, I mean, we've got some pretty small, intimate groups at the recovery center. So I would encourage them to connect with a recovery coach who can explain to them what those specific groups at the recovery center might look like. So then we can say, just like Katie said, for the potluck, usually 30-ish, maybe 40 people. Well, she can also share with that person, Smart Recovery has this many people, All Recovery has this many, and then they can kind of choose. And in their decision process, they're connecting one-on-one with somebody that will become a safe person as well.
And do you guys go to those groups with them sometimes?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Courtney, the same thing with mental health is it doesn't mean they get tossed into a group. It's always starting one-on-one. Groups are a secondary, optional sort of method, but typically if they think, oh my gosh, I'm in a room like this telling my story, that is not the way it is. So I think they need to understand it's really one-on-one, very private. So.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Sorry. Raise my hand like it's school. So I just wanna compliment, you guys, Melinda. I'm gonna call you Miss Heinlein. And Katie, just for the stuff that you do and Turning Point in general, because I've been to both centers in Chittenden and in Franklin County. I worked at Chittenden as a recovery coach when the emergency department grant first started. And I love how you, Melinda, just put it out there. You phrased it as correct me if I'm wrong, but we're helping them regain their prefrontal cortex and making those sound decisions, right? By motivationally interviewing them so we can pull those answers out of them. And that's so important because they've been riding on fight, flight, freeze forever. And that's not a fun place to be, as we know, and just, and the glory of it all is really, truly just watching them grow through their journey. That's one of the things that I found so compelling and awesome about doing any of this work, is watching the individual grow, seeing them either in their struggle, meeting them in the emergency department or wherever they're at, to I don't just coming back months later and saying thank you. I'm now, this many months, this many years sober, and I remember you saying this to me, and it's amazing. And I just want to say thank you for being there for people still, and growing that emergency department. And I want to thank NMC for, letting recovery coaches in, because it's not easy going into a hospital and saying, hey, we can help you. We're not trying to step on your toes, I swear. And also supporting the hospital staff, because they see a lot of stuff, and it's traumatizing for them as well. And so that's why we do the work that we do, and you guys. So I appreciate it.
Thanks. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, I had a conversation. I'm a big Miller Pearsall fan. I love Miller. And we were talking about that, and she had said, this was just last week, I just don't know how you do what you do. And I said, well, where I feel like it's unfortunate is I get to experience those miracles so often, and you guys don't get to see them, which is why the goal is to continue bringing these what happens next, where are they now type stories to people, because just like you said, we get to witness those miracles. And I think, in closing, just to say, with Randy sharing his experience, he was one of those individuals in the emergency department bed. And now fast forward, he's working in recovery, and he's enthusiastic, and he's a force for good. So that's the cool thing, is it's not only seeing people that can get healthier and heal, but now they're part of the solution, and they're there to help us continue to fight with keeping people healthy and alive and bringing resource and not allowing those sad stories to bring us down and give up. So the resilience of a person in recovery is, it's beautiful. If a person can use, some of the effort that they used in staying in that lifestyle towards being a force for good, we just see miracles after miracle, and that is such a blessing. So I think I'm going to turn it over to Joe, because we've got 3 minutes.
Okay.
But thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you for a great presentation. And you know, once again, truly a great example of partnerships locally and collaboration, that organizations do have to work together. We have to wrap people in their time of need with those that have expertise in various areas so that people can make the most of their lives. So again, thank you to both organizations for all that you do each and every day, and continued success. And you truly are changing lives. I think that's the thing. Everybody's in this to try to help people. That's the core, is the individual. And everybody comes at it from a different aspect. But the thing that's so exciting is that this program is functioning between a couple of organizations, plus many others that people get referred to. But I did want to focus on the Turning Point of Franklin County, working so closely with NMC, and how that is really, really changing lives. So again, thank you very much for a great presentation. And with that, we will be reconvening on June the 5th, and as we always do in June, it'll be our meeting with our local legislators post-session. So that'll be here in this room and virtually on June the 5th. So again, thanks everybody, have a good month, and thanks again for your time this month. Thank you.
Recording stopped.
Melinda has your